The clatter of silverware and the low hum of conversation filled the Evans dining room, but beneath the surface, tension simmered like a pot about to boil over. I sat at the head of the table, watching my family go through the motions of another Sunday dinner. My son Daniel, always the charmer, was telling a story about his latest business deal, while his younger brother Eric nodded along, eyes darting between me and the roast chicken. My daughter-in-law, Maya, sat quietly beside Daniel, her smile tight, her gaze flickering to me every few minutes. I'd noticed her unease for weeks, but tonight it was sharper, as if she was carrying a secret too heavy to bear. The conversation lulled, and I reached for my glass of water. That's when I felt it, a small slip of paper pressed into my palm under the table. I glanced at Maya, her face carefully blank, but her hand trembled as she withdrew. I unfolded the note beneath the tablecloth, my heart thudding as I read the hurried scrawl. "Dad, pretend you're sick. Leave immediately." For a moment, I stared at the words, confusion and dread warring in my chest. Why would Maya, who barely spoke above a whisper these days, risk slipping me a note in front of everyone? I looked up, meeting her eyes. She gave the slightest shake of her head, pleading with me to trust her. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the room pressing in. "Excuse me," I said, my voice wavering just enough to sound convincing. "I'm not feeling well. I think I need to lie down." Daniel's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face. "You all right, Dad? You never get sick." I forced a weak smile. "Just a headache. Maybe something I ate." Eric shrugged, already reaching for the mashed potatoes. "Get some rest, old man." Maya's hand hovered near her glass, knuckles white. I pushed back from the table, every instinct screaming at me to stay, to demand answers, but something in Maya's eyes told me this was bigger than indigestion. I made my way down the hall, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses fading behind me. I slipped into my bedroom, closed the door, and pressed my ear to the wood. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then, 10 minutes later, I heard Daniel's voice, low and urgent. "He's gone. Check his room." Footsteps thundered down the hall. I barely had time to slip into the closet before the door burst open. Eric and Daniel rifled through my drawers, muttering curses. "Where is it?" Eric hissed. "He must have moved it." My heart pounded as I realized they were searching for something they thought I had hidden. I stayed perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. Maya's warning echoed in my mind. What had I stumbled into? Why were my own sons tearing apart my room the moment I left the table? If you enjoy powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. I waited, every muscle tense, as Daniel slammed a drawer shut. "We'll find it. He's not as clever as he thinks." The brothers stormed out, leaving chaos in their wake. I slipped from the closet, my mind racing. I needed answers, and I needed to trust Maya. Whatever was happening, it was clear I was no longer safe in my own home. The note in my pocket felt like a lifeline and a warning. 10 minutes ago, I was just a father at dinner. Now, I was a man on the edge of a family war, and the only person I could trust was the one who risked everything to save me. The game had changed, and I was determined to find out why. Long before the note, before the whispers and the secrets, my family dinners were a source of pride. I was Richard Evans, a man who built his life from the ground up, a widower who poured his heart into his sons and the business that bore our name. The Evans family was respected in our small town, our hardware store a fixture on Main Street for nearly 40 years. After my wife passed, I did my best to keep the family close, hosting Sunday dinners, celebrating every birthday, and making sure my sons knew they were my legacy. But lately, something had shifted. Daniel, my eldest, had always been ambitious, but in the last year, he'd grown distant, his phone calls shorter, his visits more about business than family. Eric, the younger, followed Daniel's lead, eager to prove himself but never quite stepping out of his brother's shadow. And then there was Maya. She married Daniel 3 years ago, a quiet, thoughtful woman who always seemed to notice the little things. How I liked my coffee, the way I checked the locks before bed, the stories I told about their mother. At first, I thought she was just shy, but over time, I saw the worry in her eyes, the way she flinched when Daniel raised his voice, the way she lingered after dinner to help with the dishes, as if she was searching for a moment of peace. The tension in the house grew thicker with every passing week. Daniel and Eric would huddle in the den, their voices low and urgent, the door always closed. I caught snippets of conversation, words like inheritance, control, and dad's getting old. I tried to brush it off, telling myself they were just worried about the future, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't go away. One night, as I passed the den on my way to bed, I heard Daniel's voice, sharp and angry. "He's never going to hand it over, Eric. We have to make him." Eric's reply was muffled, but the intent was clear. I paused, my hand on the banister, heart pounding. Was this what my family had come to? The next morning, I found Maya in the kitchen, her eyes red from crying. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Rough night?" I asked gently. She nodded, glancing over her shoulder. "Just tired, Dad." I wanted to press her, to ask what was really going on, but Daniel walked in, his presence filling the room, and the moment was lost. Over the next few days, I started noticing things that didn't add up. Important documents went missing from my office. The safe where I kept the business deeds was left ajar. Daniel insisted on handling the store's finances, pushing me to relax and enjoy retirement. Eric started showing up late, making excuses about meetings that never seemed to end. The final straw came when I overheard Daniel and Maya arguing in the backyard. I stayed hidden behind the curtain, my heart breaking as I listened. "You can't do this, Daniel," Maya pleaded. "He's your father." Daniel's voice was cold. "He's in the way. If you want to stay in this family, you'll keep quiet." Maya's silence was answer enough. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering where I'd gone wrong. My sons, the boys I'd raised to be honest and loyal, were plotting against me. Maya, the only one who seemed to care, was trapped in the middle. I knew I had to be careful, to watch and wait, to trust my instincts. The family I thought I knew was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The note at dinner was a warning, but it was also a call to action. Whatever my sons were planning, I would find out. And when the time came, I would be ready. After that night, I started seeing my home with new eyes. Every conversation, every glance between Daniel and Eric, every time Maya lingered in the kitchen after everyone else had left, it all took on a new weight. I became a quiet observer in my own house, careful not to let on that I suspected anything. Daniel's behavior grew more erratic. He'd disappear for hours, returning with vague stories about business opportunities and new investors. Eric, always eager to please his older brother, started parroting Daniel's lines about the future of the store, about how things had to change, and Dad's way isn't working anymore. I tried to keep the peace, but the tension was a living thing, pressing in on me from all sides. One afternoon, while Daniel and Eric were out, I found myself drawn to Daniel's office. The door was unlocked, which was unusual. I stepped inside, the air heavy with the scent of cologne and printer ink. On the desk, half buried under a stack of invoices, was a folder marked Evans Holdings Transition Plan. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, drafts of new business agreements, a letter to the bank requesting a change in account ownership, and, most chilling of all, a power of attorney form with my name typed neatly at the top. The signature line was blank, but I knew what this meant. They were planning to take everything, to push me out of my own business and my own home. I snapped a photo of the documents with my phone, my hands shaking. As I slipped the folder back into place, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I barely had time to close the office door behind me before Daniel appeared, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing in here, Dad?" I forced a smile. "Just looking for the utility bill. Thought it might be in your stack." He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. That night, I found Maya in the backyard, her arms wrapped around herself against the chill. I joined her, the silence between us heavy. "Thank you for the note," I said quietly. She looked at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know what else to do. They're planning something. I tried to warn you before, but Daniel, he's not the man I married." I nodded, the truth settling between us. "I know. I found some documents in his office. They're trying to take the business." Maya's voice trembled. "It's worse than that. They're going to frame you for fraud. Daniel said if you didn't step down, he'd make sure you had no choice." The words hit me like a punch. My own sons, plotting to ruin me. I felt anger, yes, but also a deep, aching sadness. I'd given them everything, and this was how they repaid me. "Why are you helping me, Maya?" I asked, searching her face. She hesitated, then whispered, "Because you're the only real family I have left. And because I can't let them do this to you." I squeezed her hand, gratitude and fear mingling in my chest. "We have to be careful. If they find out you warned me," she shook her head. "I know. I'll be careful. But you need to protect yourself, Dad. Don't trust them. Not even for a second." That night, I barely slept. I replayed every conversation, every warning sign I'd ignored. I realized how blind I'd been, how much I'd wanted to believe my family was still whole. But the truth was clear now. Daniel and Eric were after more than just the business. They wanted control, and they'd stop at nothing to get it. I knew I had to act, but I also knew I couldn't do it alone. Maya was risking everything to help me. I owed it to her, and to myself, to fight back, not with anger, but with patience and proof. The next morning, I started making copies of every important document I could find, hiding them in places only I knew. I watched Daniel and Eric more closely, noting every suspicious move, every whispered conversation. The house felt colder, the walls closing in, but I refused to let fear win. I was Richard Evans, and I would not be erased from my own life. The hidden motive was out in the open now, and I was ready to face it, one careful step at a time. The days that followed were a masterclass in deception. I moved through my own home as if I were a guest, careful not to arouse suspicion, but inside, every nerve was on edge. Daniel and Eric became bolder, their conversations less guarded, their plans more aggressive. I overheard them in the garage one evening, Daniel's voice low and urgent. "We need Dad out of the picture before the end of the quarter. The bank's waiting on the paperwork. If he gets suspicious, we're finished." Eric, always the follower, grumbled, "What about Maya? She's been acting weird. I caught her in your office last night." My heart skipped. Maya was risking more than I realized. Daniel's reply was cold. "Keep her in line. Remind her what's at stake." That night, Maya found me in the kitchen, her face pale. Eric saw me looking through the files. He threatened me, Dad. He said if I didn't stop, he'd tell Daniel I was betraying them. I put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. You did the right thing. But we have to be smarter. No more searching alone. If you find anything, bring it to me. She nodded, her eyes shining with fear and determination. I realized then how much she'd come to mean to me, not just as a daughter-in-law, but as a true ally. The next morning, Daniel announced at breakfast that he'd scheduled a meeting with a family lawyer. Just a routine check-in, he said, but his eyes never left mine. I played along, feigning confusion. Is there something I should know about? Daniel smiled, all teeth. Just making sure everything's in order, Dad. You've worked hard enough. Time to let us handle things. I forced a laugh, but inside, I was seething. After breakfast, I slipped into my office and checked the safe. The original business deeds and my will were still there, but I noticed the combination lock had fresh scratches. Someone had tried to break in. I changed the code, then called Frank, my old friend and attorney. I told him everything, from the forged documents to the threats against Maya. Frank's voice was grave. You need to protect yourself, Richard. Start moving your assets. Make copies of everything. And don't sign a single thing without me present. I followed his advice, scanning every document, hiding digital backups on a flash drive I kept in my sock drawer. Maya and I developed a system. She'd leave a red mug on the counter if she found anything new, and I'd check the kitchen when the coast was clear. One afternoon, she handed me a USB drive, her hands shaking. I found this in Daniel's briefcase. It's full of emails between him and Eric, plans to transfer the business, instructions for forging your signature, even a draft press release announcing your retirement. I stared at the drive, the weight of betrayal settling on my shoulders. You've done more than enough, Maya. I won't let them hurt you. She shook her head. We're in this together, Dad. I won't back down. That night, I watched Daniel and Eric from the hallway as they pored over documents, their voices tense. He's getting suspicious, Eric muttered. Maya's not on our side. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. Then we make her choose. She's either with us or she's out. I slipped away before they could see me, my mind racing. The setup was nearly complete. They thought they had all the pieces in place, but they didn't know about Maya's courage or my resolve. I knew the time was coming when I'd have to confront them, but I needed one last piece of evidence, a confession, something undeniable. Until then, I would play the part of the aging father, the man too tired to fight. But inside, I was sharper than ever, every sense tuned to the danger in my own home. The trap was set, and I was ready to spring it. All I needed was the right moment, and the right ally by my side. The night after Maya slipped me the note, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every detail of dinner, every glance, every word, searching for clues I might have missed. I kept the note tucked in my pocket, a reminder that I wasn't imagining things. My own sons were plotting against me, and the only person I could trust was the woman they underestimated. The next morning, I left the house early, telling Daniel I had a doctor's appointment. In truth, I drove to a quiet park on the edge of town and called Frank from a payphone, my voice low. "They're getting desperate, Frank. I think they're going to try something soon." Frank's advice was simple: stay alert. Don't confront them yet. Let them make the first move. I returned home just before lunch, parking down the street and slipping in through the back door. I needed to see what Daniel and Eric would do when they thought I was gone. I hid in the small storage room off the kitchen, the one nobody used since my wife passed. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Daniel's voice was sharp. "Check his room. He must have hidden it somewhere." Eric's reply was muffled, but I caught the words "safe" and "documents." I listened as they tore through my things, cursing under their breath. My heart pounded, but I stayed perfectly still. After a few minutes, the house fell silent. I crept out and found Maya waiting in the hallway, her face pale. "They're looking for the business deeds," she whispered. "They think you're hiding them." I nodded, my mind racing. "We need to move them. Tonight." Maya led me to the garage, where she'd hidden a small fireproof box behind the old paint cans. Inside were the original deeds, my will, and the flash drive with all the evidence she'd gathered. "I've been copying everything," she said, her voice trembling. "Emails, texts, even a video of Daniel and Eric talking about forging your signature." I stared at her, gratitude and fear warring in my chest. "You're risking everything, Maya." She shook her head. "I can't let them do this to you. Or to me." That afternoon, I watched from the window as Daniel and Eric argued in the driveway, their faces red with frustration. I realized then that their alliance was fragile, built on greed and fear. If I could push them just a little further, they might turn on each other. That night, I waited until the house was quiet, then slipped out to the garage and took the fireproof box to Frank's office, leaving it in his care. When I returned, Maya was waiting in the kitchen, her eyes wide with worry. "Did you do it?" I nodded. "It's safe now. They can tear the house apart. They won't find a thing." She let out a shaky breath. "What do we do next?" I looked at her, seeing not just my daughter-in-law, but my partner in this fight. "We wait. We watch. And when the time is right, we show them what real family looks like." The escape wasn't just about hiding documents. It was about reclaiming control, about refusing to be a victim in my own home. As I lay in bed that night, listening to the creaks and sighs of the old house, I felt a strange sense of hope. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't alone. Maya and I were in this together, and I knew we had a chance. The next move was theirs, but the endgame was mine to write. The next morning, the house was thick with suspicion. Daniel and Eric barely spoke to me, their eyes cold, their words clipped. I played the part of the confused old man, shuffling around the kitchen, asking about the weather, pretending not to notice the tension. But inside, I was sharper than ever, every sense tuned to the smallest detail. Maya and I had become experts at silent communication. A glance, a nod, a note slipped under a coffee mug. We met in the garden, pretending to discuss the roses, but our words were urgent and low. "They're planning something for the end of the week," Maya whispered, her hands buried in the soil. Daniel said if you don't sign the new documents, they'll go to the bank and claim you're unfit to run the business. I nodded, my jaw tight. We need more than just their threats. We need proof, something undeniable. Maya's eyes darted to the kitchen window, where Eric watched us with suspicion. I have something, she said, her voice barely audible. A flash drive. I've been recording their conversations on my phone. There's enough to show what they're planning. My heart pounded as she pressed the small drive into my palm, her fingers lingering for a moment. Be careful, Dad. If they find out, they'll come after both of us. I squeezed her hand, gratitude and resolve burning in my chest. We're in this together, Maya. I won't let anything happen to you. That night, I waited until the house was quiet, then locked myself in my study and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The files were damning. Audio recordings of Daniel and Eric discussing how to forge my signature, emails outlining their plan to transfer the business, even a video of Eric practicing my handwriting. I copied everything to a secure cloud account, then made another backup for Frank. The next day, I called Frank from the hardware store, my voice low. We have what we need. It's all on the drive. I'll bring it to you tonight. Frank's reply was steady. Good work, Richard. Don't let your guard down. They're desperate now. Back at home, Daniel tried to corner me in the hallway, his smile forced. Dad, we need to talk about the future. You can't run the business forever. It's time to let us take over. I met his gaze, my own smile just as fake. We'll talk soon, Daniel. I promise. He didn't like that answer, but he let it go, for now. That evening, Maya and I met in the garage, the air thick with the scent of oil and old paint. They're watching me, she whispered. Eric went through my phone. I think he suspects something. I handed her a new phone, a cheap burner I'd picked up that morning. Use this from now on. Don't take any chances. She nodded, her eyes shining with fear and determination. What's our next move? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. We set a trap. We let them think they've won. And when they try to force my hand, we show them the truth. Maya smiled, a flicker of hope in her eyes. I'm ready. The secret alliance was more than just a partnership. It was a lifeline, a promise that we wouldn't let greed and betrayal destroy what mattered most. As I watched Maya slip back into the house, her shoulders squared, I knew we were closer than ever to turning the tables. The evidence was in our hands. Now, all we needed was the right moment to strike. The days crawled by, each one tighter with tension than the last. Daniel and Eric grew restless, their tempers flaring at the smallest provocation. I kept my head down, playing the part of the weary father, but inside, I was watching everything. Maya and I communicated in code. She'd leave a yellow flower in the vase if she overheard something important, a red one if she needed to meet in the garden. On Thursday, I found a red rose waiting for me. I joined her among the tomato plants, pretending to check the soil. They're planning to confront you tonight, she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel said if you don't sign the transfer papers, they'll call the lawyer and claim you're mentally unfit. I nodded, my mind racing. Let them try. We're ready. That evening, Daniel called a family meeting in the living room. He sat at the head of the coffee table, Eric at his side, both of them with a stack of papers and a pen. Maya sat beside me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Daniel cleared his throat, his voice full of false concern. "Dad, we've been talking. It's time for you to step back. You've done enough. Let us take care of things now." Eric slid the papers across the table. "Just sign, Dad. It's for the best." I picked up the pen, my hand steady. "You want me to sign over the business? The house? Everything?" Daniel nodded, his eyes cold. "It's time, Dad. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I looked at Maya, then back at my sons. "Before I sign anything, I want to hear you say it. Why are you really doing this?" Daniel's mask slipped for a moment, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Because you're old, Dad. You're holding us back. We deserve our chance." Eric chimed in, "You're not fit to run things anymore. You'll ruin everything if you stay in charge." I set the pen down, my voice calm. "Thank you for your honesty." I reached into my pocket and pressed the record button on my phone, making sure the audio was clear. "Say it again, Daniel. Tell me what you told Eric last night." Daniel's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I played the audio Maya had captured, Daniel and Eric's voices, clear as day, plotting to forge my signature and frame me for fraud. The room went silent. Maya stood, her voice steady. "I've been recording everything. We have emails, texts, and video. If you try to force Dad out, we'll go to the authorities." Eric lunged for the phone, but I stepped between them. "It's over, boys. I know everything. And so does Frank." Daniel's bravado crumbled. "You can't do this. We're your sons." I shook my head, sadness and resolve mingling in my chest. "You stopped being my sons the moment you tried to destroy this family." Maya put her arm around me, her strength a quiet anchor. "We're done being afraid of you." The confrontation was raw, painful, and necessary. For the first time, I saw Daniel and Eric for who they really were, lost, angry, and desperate. But I also saw Maya, standing tall beside me, and I knew we'd already won the most important battle. The truth was out. The game had changed. And for the first time in months, I felt like the head of my family again. After the confrontation, the house was eerily quiet. Daniel and Eric retreated to their rooms, slamming doors and muttering threats, but the power in the house had shifted. Maya and I sat together in the kitchen, the weight of what we'd done settling over us. She poured us both a cup of tea, her hands still trembling. "Do you think they'll try something else?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my jaw set. "They're desperate now. But we have the evidence. We just need to be careful." That night, I barely slept. I heard Daniel pacing the hallway, his footsteps heavy with anger. Around midnight, I heard the soft ping of Maya's burner phone. She showed me the message, her face pale. "If you don't back off, you'll regret it. This is your last warning." It was from Eric. I took the phone, my anger simmering. "He's trying to scare you. But we're not backing down." The next morning, I called Frank and told him about the threat. He advised us to keep our distance and document everything. "They're cornered, Richard. That's when people make mistakes." I spent the day at the hardware store, greeting customers and pretending nothing was wrong. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying every detail, every risk. When I returned home, Maya met me at the door, her eyes wide. "Daniel tried to get into your study. He was looking for the flash drive." I smiled grimly. "He won't find it. Frank has the original, and I have another copy hidden." That evening, I called a family meeting, telling Daniel and Eric I wanted to discuss my health and the future of the business. They arrived, suspicious but eager, thinking I was finally giving in. I let them talk, let them lay out their plans, their vision for the business without me. I watched as Daniel's confidence returned, as Eric nodded along, both of them convinced they'd won. Then I stood, my voice steady. "Before we go any further, I want to make something clear. I know what you've been doing. I have the evidence. And if you try to force me out, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth." Daniel's face twisted in anger. "You're bluffing." I shook my head. "Try me." Maya stood beside me, her presence a silent warning. "We're not afraid of you anymore." The turning point had come. Daniel and Eric realized they were no longer in control. Their threats, their schemes, their manipulation, it all crumbled in the face of the truth. For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes. That night, as Maya and I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the garden, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. "Thank you," I said quietly. She smiled, her eyes shining with relief. "We did it together, Dad." The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The next move was ours, and I was ready to finish what we'd started. The Evans family would survive this storm, and come out stronger on the other side. The next morning, the air in the house was thick with anticipation. I could feel Daniel and Eric watching me, waiting for a sign of weakness, but I gave them nothing. Instead, I went about my routine, making coffee, reading the paper, and greeting Maya with a quiet nod that said, "It's time." We had agreed the night before. Today was the day we would end this. I called another family meeting, this time insisting Frank join us via video call. Daniel and Eric exchanged glances, suspicion flickering in their eyes, but they agreed, eager to see what I would do. We gathered in the living room, the tension palpable. Frank's face appeared on the screen, his voice calm and steady. "Thank you for joining, everyone. Richard has something important to share." I looked at my sons, my heart heavy but resolute. "I know you've been plotting to take the business. I know about the forged documents, the threats, the plan to frame me for fraud. I have all the evidence, emails, recordings, even video." Daniel scoffed, but his eyes darted to Eric, who was already sweating. "You're bluffing, Dad. You don't have anything." I nodded to Maya, who pulled out her phone and played the audio of Daniel and Eric discussing their scheme. Their voices filled the room, undeniable and damning. Eric lunged for Maya, but I stepped between them, my voice like steel. "It's over. If you try to destroy the evidence, you'll only make things worse. Frank has copies. The bank has been notified. The lawyer has everything." Daniel's face twisted in rage. "You set us up." I met his glare, my own voice calm. "No, you set yourselves up. I just refused to let you get away with it." For a moment, I saw the little boys they once were, lost, angry, desperate for approval. But that didn't excuse what they'd done. Eric tried to grab Maya's phone, but she pulled away, her voice steady. "There's a backup, Eric. You can't erase the truth." Frank spoke up from the screen. "Gentlemen, I advise you to stop now. Any further threats or attempts to destroy evidence will only add to your legal troubles." The room fell silent, the weight of their defeat settling over Daniel and Eric. I looked at them, my heart aching but firm. "You had a choice. You could have come to me, talked to me, worked with me. Instead, you chose lies and betrayal." Daniel slumped in his chair, the fight gone from his eyes. Eric stared at the floor, his hands shaking. Maya sat beside me, her presence a quiet strength. The trap had been sprung, and there was no way out. I turned to Frank. "Let's make it official. The business stays in my name. Daniel and Eric are removed from all accounts and decision-making. Maya and I will handle the transition." Frank nodded, his voice final. "It's done." As the meeting ended, Daniel and Eric left the room in silence, their dreams of control shattered. Maya squeezed my hand, relief and gratitude shining in her eyes. The battle was over, but the healing had just begun. I looked at her, my voice soft. "Thank you for believing in me." She smiled, tears glistening. "Thank you for trusting me." The Evans family had been tested, but we had survived. The truth had set us free, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for the future. The house was quiet after the meeting, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm. Daniel and Eric retreated to their rooms, their footsteps heavy, their voices gone. I sat at the kitchen table with Maya, the weight of months of suspicion and fear finally lifting from my shoulders. She poured us both a cup of tea, her hands steady for the first time in weeks. "It's really over, isn't it?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, feeling both relief and sorrow. "It's over for them. But for us, it's just the beginning." That afternoon, Frank came by in person, bringing the final paperwork. We sat together in my study, reviewing every document, every signature, every clause that would ensure Daniel and Eric could never touch the business or the family trust again. Maya sat beside me, her presence a comfort. When it was done, Frank shook my hand. "You did the right thing, Richard. You protected your legacy, and your family." I watched as Daniel and Eric packed their things, their anger replaced by a hollow resignation. Daniel paused at the door, his eyes meeting mine for the first time in weeks. "You didn't have to do this, Dad. We could have worked something out." I shook my head, my voice steady. You made your choice, Daniel. You tried to take everything I built. You tried to hurt Maya. I can forgive a lot, but not that. Eric didn't say a word, just kept his head down as he left. The door closed behind them, and the house felt lighter, as if it could finally breathe again. That evening, Maya and I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the garden. She leaned her head on my shoulder, her voice full of gratitude. I never thought I'd have a real family, not after everything with my own parents. Thank you for trusting me, Dad. I squeezed her hand, my heart full. You saved me, Maya. You saved all of us. The reckoning was painful, but it was necessary. The business was safe, the family was healing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt proud, not just of what I'd built, but of the people I'd chosen to stand beside me. The next morning, I called a staff meeting at the hardware store. I stood before my employees, my voice strong. There have been changes, but the Evans name still stands for honesty and hard work. We're a family here, and that will never change. The staff applauded, their faith in me, and in Maya, restored. As I looked around the room, I realized that family isn't just blood. It's trust, loyalty, and the courage to do what's right, even when it hurts. The reckoning was over. The future was ours to shape. In the days that followed, the house slowly returned to something like peace. The tension that had haunted every room faded, replaced by a quiet sense of relief. Daniel and Eric were gone, their absence leaving a strange emptiness, but also a chance for healing. Maya and I settled into a new routine, sharing morning coffee and evening walks through the garden. She took on more responsibility at the hardware store, her confidence growing with every decision she made. The staff welcomed her, grateful for her kindness and steady hand. Customers noticed the change, too. Smiles came easier, laughter returned, and the old sense of community blossomed again. I spent my days teaching Maya the ins and outs of the business, passing on the lessons I'd learned over a lifetime. She listened carefully, asking questions, eager to honor the Evans name. One afternoon, as we sorted through old files in the office, Maya found a faded photograph of my late wife, her smile bright and full of hope. Maya traced the edges of the picture, her eyes misty. She would have been proud of you, Dad. Of both of us. I nodded, my throat tight. She always believed in family. In doing what's right, no matter how hard it gets. Maya smiled, her hand finding mine. Thank you for trusting me. For letting me be part of this family. I squeezed her hand, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. You are family, Maya. You always will be. The business began to thrive again, not because of any grand gesture, but because we returned to the values that built it: honesty, hard work, and loyalty. I set up a new trust, ensuring that Maya would never have to face the kind of betrayal we'd just survived. The staff received bonuses, a small way to thank them for standing by us. The community rallied around us, bringing casseroles and stories, reminding me that even in the darkest times, we were never truly alone. On Sunday, we hosted a family dinner, just Maya and me, but it felt right. We laughed, shared memories, and made plans for the future. As the sun set, Maya raised her glass. To new beginnings. To family. I clinked my glass against hers, my heart full. To family, Maya. Always. The aftermath of Daniel and Eric's betrayal had left scars, but it had also revealed the strength of our bond. We were survivors, not victims. And as the days grew longer and the garden bloomed, I knew we were ready for whatever came next. The Evans family was whole again, and nothing, not even the deepest betrayal, could take that from us. Spring sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, painting golden stripes across the table where Maya and I sat, sharing a quiet breakfast. The house, once filled with tension and suspicion, now felt like a true home again, filled with warmth, laughter, and the gentle rhythm of a family healing. The hardware store was thriving, the staff loyal, and the community's trust restored. Maya had become not just my daughter-in-law, but my partner in every sense. She managed the books with a sharp eye, greeted customers with genuine kindness, and brought new ideas that breathed life into the old business. I watched her grow into her role, proud of the woman she'd become and grateful for the courage she'd shown when everything was on the line. One afternoon, as we closed up shop, Maya paused at the door, looking out at the street where neighbors waved and children played. "Do you ever regret how it all happened, Dad?" she asked softly. I shook my head, feeling the weight of the past months settle into something like peace. No. I wish it hadn't come to that, but I don't regret standing up for what's right. I don't regret trusting you. She smiled, her eyes shining. I never thought I'd find a real family. Thank you for giving me a place here. I reached over, squeezing her hand. You saved me, Maya. You saved this family. I'll never forget that. That evening, we hosted a small dinner for the staff and a few close friends. The house was filled with laughter, the clink of glasses, and the kind of easy conversation that only comes when trust has been rebuilt. As the sun set, I stood to make a toast. To family, not just the one we're born with, but the one we choose. To second chances, to forgiveness, and to the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. The room erupted in applause, and I felt a deep, quiet pride. Later, as Maya and I sat on the porch, watching the stars blink to life, she leaned her head on my shoulder. We made it, Dad. We really did. I nodded, my heart full. We did. And whatever comes next, we'll face it together. The Evans family had been tested, but we had emerged stronger, our bonds unbreakable. The pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by hope and the promise of new beginnings. As I closed my eyes, listening to the sounds of home, I knew we were ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The story of our family wasn't just about loss or revenge. It was about love, trust, and the quiet power of standing together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace.